Monsters, demons, clowns, grown men who think the world owes them something because they refuse to ever go to therapy. You probably think I'm listing some of the spookiest shit in the world right now. And you're not wrong, but I'm also listing characters from the DC animated universe. These shows, from Batman the Animated Series to Superman to Justice League, that one you forgot about with the robot, despite being superhero cartoons, love to steer into horror genre territory. And why shouldn't they? I mean, superhero isn't a genre, cartoon isn't a genre. More or less, these cartoons didn't have a distinct place to call home. So, like nomads in the time of old, each episode went its own way with a couple friends to stake its claim and find some territory to call home. Some of them, like these bad boys here, decided they were good hanging out at the comedy club. These guys said, hey, we're gonna go hang out with the sci-fi geeks. But despite how much I love all of those episodes, they're not the ones we're talking about today. You know what day it is, you saw the video title, you know we're only gonna be talking about the most spine-chilling, hair-raising, frightening stories out of this whole universe. We are talking about these guys. Whoa, how did that one get in there? Get out of here, you're not that scary. Probably one of the biggest things that these episodes have in common is the big, spooky villain reveal. Obviously, this isn't some kind of property that's exclusive to horror. I mean, we didn't collectively crap our pants when we found out that Selena Kyle was secretly the Catwoman, or when we found out that the leader of the big bad terrorist organization in the robot show looked like your great Uncle Jerry. There's an art to these things. A build-up, putting the viewer on edge, whether it be through misdirection or suspense, or maybe even a little bit of both. Like they're different things that you can mix together in a recipe. Immersing you in the world that the story's taking place in, putting you in the protagonist's shoes, and then all of a sudden ripping it all out from under you when you come to figure out that the inconspicuous guy in the wallaby mask was actually Freddy Krueger the whole time. This can be something that is extremely difficult to pull off in a 22-minute runtime, but we got it time and again. This doctor guy, psych, he's just a huge bat, like the absolute biggest bat you've ever seen. Bruce Wayne's best friend, the district attorney, you knew it was coming, but bam, look at him. Look at him! Even his fiance looks like she's about to just absolutely piss herself. How about this normal looking bozo the clown over here? You think clowns are funny? Well, I ain't ever seen Funny take a hit like that. Oh my God, he's been a robot the whole time and he's going to kill Batman. Each one of these reveals just takes your expectations, crumples them up, throws them in the trash, then picks up the trash can and just beats you in the head with it mercilessly for ever having had such a worthless idea of where you expected things to go. You thought this was a kid's cartoon? Nah, son, it's a small-scale replica of that scene from Texas Chainsaw 2 where homeboy was hiding out right under your nose the whole time. Boom! But how do you build that suspense? After all, superheroes by default are action heroes. And I mean, do we really expect Superman to actually be frightened by this toy store display come to life? Sure, that's a valid question, but let me counter it with this. Do you expect me to care about how Superman feels almost ever? Don't get me wrong. There are moments like the death of Dan Turpin, the World of Cardboard moment in Justice League Unlimited, and even more recently, outside of the DCAU, a young Clark Kent crying his eyes out in Superman Man of Tomorrow once he realizes humans find aliens scary. These moments are all masterpieces, but what made them important isn't just how Superman feels, it's about the world around him. So, if you're gonna do horror in a Superman cartoon, you really have to tap into that. Let me give you a comparison. Recently, I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil, like way too much Resident Evil. And something that most fans of the franchise can agree on is how the longer the series goes on, the less frightening it gets. We start off as a couple of cops who have never dealt with zombos before, and that's where the horror comes from. This is a new experience for our characters. And with Resident Evil 0 through 3 taking place within a time span of roughly 2 months, none of the recurring characters are really given the opportunity to acclimate to this new normal. Fast forward 6 years to Resident Evil 4, and Leon, the cop who had to fight off zombies his first day on the job in Resident Evil 2, is now an action hero. And sure, there are a couple of spooky parts in that game. I don't think I'll ever get over those piece of shit chainsaw-wielding ganados. But it's nowhere close to ripping you off the edge of your seat, throwing you on the floor, and then ripping your brains right out of your skull like its predecessors did.
Okay, I'm thinking that maybe we should run away from this guy. He seems a little more menacing than the other zombies.
And as the series goes on through 5 and 6, continuing to focus on the characters you know and love and pumping the action up even further due to just how insanely experienced they all are, at this time, every single shred of horror has vanished from the franchise. Unless, for some reason, the player has never even heard of a zombie before. And let's not kid ourselves, out of an infinite multiverse, we don't live in a universe where that's even likely to occur. But now, in Resident Evil 7, you're thrown in as a brand new character who's never been on the front line for any of this. You don't see a single familiar face from the franchise until the very end, where they just happen to be part of the crew that rescues your sorry ass. In case you don't get what I'm talking about, in the Superman episode Fun and Games, Superman is action hero Chris Redfield. I mean, obviously, they both punch boulders. Lois Lane is Ethan Winters, and the Toy Man is that spooky 10-year-old girl that just has you on edge the whole time, even when you don't realize it's her. Now, obviously, the world of Metropolis is a bit brighter than the Baker household, but take a look at this villain reveal. Had he been on a tricycle, you would almost be expecting him to ask if you want to play a game. And this was 8 years before the first Saw movie. I'm not saying somebody copied someone else's homework, but it would explain why James Wan has made his way into the DC stable. Of course, this episode isn't the only creepy entry in the Man of Steel's animated history. Let's talk about Parasite for a second. Not that one. Not the movie from last year whose DVD cover I printed out for a 4-second gag. I was talking about this guy.
All units, request assistance on Old Ocean Road.
This is 4-2. Negative on the assistance. I'm fine, Edna.
10-4. You gave me a scare there.
This guy has gnawed at the back of my mind ever since the first time I had ever seen him. Like Toyman, his fear factor seems to diminish every time we see him, but that introductory episode just from the grotesque chemical spill that turns janitor Rudy Jones into the parasite, to the reveal in silhouette, manipulating his voice to sound like that of his victims, and rendering Superman absolutely powerless for the majority of the episode, this dude wasn't just a threat, but a reason to piss your little 10-year-old pants. I mean, god damn, dude. Edna isn't joking. You gave me a scare there. But remember that thing I said a few seconds ago? Like Toyman, his fear factor seems to diminish every time we see him. That's not exclusive to these two characters. The more frequently you're exposed to just about anything, the less impactful it is over time. Fear, time, and the numbers go down. For just a second, pretend I'm your dad and this YouTube video is a trip to Disney World because you have been a bad audience, and to punish you, I'm turning this car around to talk about the absolute biggest bat you've ever seen for a second time. For those of you who aren't in the know, Man-Bat wasn't the only creature in the DC animated world that looked like he walked straight out of a 1930s Universal monster movie. While we had a couple zombies here and there, an Earth Mover, which is totally a zombie, but goddamn is he not spooky enough to get his own mention separately, and a literal swamp thing, Man-Bat was part of a completely different class of characters. A class that would come to be known as splicers. Initially, these characters were more or less set up to just be more monsters that Batman had to fight. We had Man-Bat, a werewolf, a sentient tiger who oddly enough doesn't look like a tiger at all, and even a second Man-Bat who Psych!
Jeez Louise, it's a woman!
One could argue that none of these creatures had the same impact as the first time we saw Man-Bat, and you wouldn't be wrong. But as time moved on and the future of this world was unraveled in Batman Beyond, these character types became extremely commonplace. Splicers, as they would come to be called in the far distant future of 19 years from now, whenever now is, were just as common as the dudes you went to high school with that blew out their earlobes trying to gauge them way too big. By the 2040s, it was just another counterculture movement tied with being a rebellious teen. Not a lot of scary going on here, unless you're the type of person who thinks trying to censor the newest Mortal Kombat game is a good way to spend your time in the Senate.
Shame on people that produce that trash. It's child abuse in my judgment.
Even in an out-of-universe context, as the audience, it's gotten harder to find these types of characters to be an actual threat. Like, I don't know if you've all been keeping up with the recent Batman The Adventures Continue series, but for those of you who have been, did this guy give you a jolt when he first showed up? Because I'll tell you right now, he got no such reaction from me.
This motherfucker just walk into the room already screaming his goddamn head off like he's just as surprised to see Batman and Azrael as they are to see him.
So, what do you do when a character, or a whole class of characters, have lost their edge? Well, you reimagine them, of course. While this dude looks creepy as with the noose around his neck and the petrified face, giving one the impression he got this way through a botched hanging, he wasn't always a great big spooky boy. In fact, while Batman the Animated Series was still trying to find his footing, he was just a big-headed dork who somehow fit his whole noggin inside of a teeny-ass sock. And really, that was the scariest thing about him. Head-shrinking powers that only worked on himself. But despite the weird character design, this episode still remains a classic, if only for just one reason.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
You've probably heard this line so many times throughout your life that you lost count. Honestly, it's probably more likely that you never even thought to count. But I did, and that time brings the counter up to nice. From Toonami promos to Comic-Con panels to the trailer for the new Batman movie, this line is everywhere. And you can tell that the crew had no idea it would become as big of a deal as it did. Because, let's be honest, if they did...
But Andy, what will vengeance solve?
Then that doesn't make any sense. Unless, wait, if Batman knows vengeance doesn't solve anything, but he is vengeance, he's gonna lose against the Riddler in the new movie, isn't he? Solved it, you don't even have to worry about buying a movie ticket. But in all seriousness, despite how iconic this line has become, a lot of people forget its roots. Not just that it's from Batman the Animated Series, but that it's a direct mirror of the Scarecrow's introduction.
Who are you? I am fear incarnate. I am the terror of Gotham. I am the Scarecrow.
While most people will look at the Joker and say he's the Batman's arch nemesis, for the last 3 decades, his identity has been wrapped up in a mirror of his most frightening villain. And there's probably a lot of fascinating stuff to talk about with that. But I'm not gonna dig into all that right now. What I am gonna do though is bring this back around to the horror genre, because overcoming your fear is a huge trope. I mean, it's how we always have a final girl that takes on the big scary movie monster. It's how we got a movie of Tommy Jarvis tracking down Jason Voorhees to kill him, and it's how we got Resident Evil 4 through 6 with badass super soldier versions of our original protagonists. So, despite Sockboy not being the Scarecrow's most powerful form, at least he gives us that development. If you guys want to talk about some real piss your pants moments though, we gotta move up to the new Batman adventures. Not only did they say, we gotta make this guy look terrifying, but also he has to sound the part. No more goofy British accents. So, they kicked Henry Pollock II out of the recording studio, deported him back to Great Britain where he belongs, drinking tea with the Queen. Hold on, he's from Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh, Britain, right? Pennsylvania. That's not in Britain, is it? Okay, got it. So they deported him back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and said, hey, who's that guy that played the Reanimator in The Reanimator? Get him in here. And then boom, the scariest motherfucker this side of the Mason-Dixon was born. Unfortunately, this new improved Scarecrow only ended up popping in for 2 episodes. One where most of the episode never even actually happened, and another where he uses an anti-fear toxin, which, if we're being honest, is a pretty frightening premise. Like, imagine you, and now imagine a version of you who's a pretty cool guy and doesn't afraid of anything. Nothing to hold you back from doing anything. I'm sure that if, like me, you deal with anxiety doing small shit like making phone calls, that this could sound pretty enticing at first. But the more I think about it, the more I keep circling back to, I don't know, at least I've stayed alive this long. Fear, just gone altogether. At that point, you're asking to get yourself hurt. And they make that pretty clear throughout the episode. Like, this dude swinging around Times Square, that could be me. And no thanks. No, I don't want any part of that. I kinda like not falling to my death from 20 stories up. Batgirl, on the other hand, I'm kinda mixing episodes here, but it felt like the perfect segue, so we're just gonna roll with it. Over the Edge is a masterclass in tension. While the premise is more action-based than horror, the majority of the episode lives within a fever dream caused by Scarecrow's fear toxin, making Barbara Gordon experience her worst fears. But unlike previous uses of the fear toxin where we see its effects on a conscious person and they're actively involved with the horror, Barbara is knocked the fuck out the whole time and just absolutely dead as shit in this nightmare. Unlike how previous victims could at least interact with their fear-induced visions, Barbara's sense of agency is taken away from her altogether. And if you don't think that's some kind of abstract psychological horror, then I don't know what to tell you. Of course, there are probably some episodes and moments I missed going through all of this that you all are gonna drop in the comments like, what about that dude in the Firefly outfit? Me, personally, I have this really weird phobia of both bugs and arson. So that was really spooky to me, which is totally fine and 100% encouraged, so long as you drop a like and a subscribe on us while you're down there. But even with the things I missed, I think the point is pretty clear, and that is, okay, so I don't know if there is a point, but more or less, I just wanted to talk about things that freaked me the fuck out as a kid, and to find a way to justify writing off all of my Resident Evil purchases on my taxes this year. So I think this basically covers that. While you're still here, this video is part of a multi-channel collaboration called One Horrifying Moment, where a bunch of us are threading together our Halloween videos in a big old playlist this year. So if you want to check out some more of those, we've linked the playlist in the description below. I definitely suggest checking out High Top's Films contribution, which dives a little bit more into the horror of Batman the Animated Series, as well as Matt Draper's video on Psycho, since this collab was his idea in the first place, and he's a good boy. Who's a good boy? You're a good boy, Matt Draper. You're a good boy. And this is the part of the video where our Patreon supporters' names zoom by. You've been on YouTube for a while, you know how Patreon works, but I'll tell you what's up anyway. These people over here are all kind enough to give us coffee. These people over here are all kind enough to give us coffee money once a month. And as a result, they get to have their names in these videos, as well as other cool bonuses like custom artwork, early access to these videos, live stream hangouts, you know, the works. If this is something that sounds intriguing to you, you can always visit us at patreon.com/DCAU Watchtower and check out the entire scope of offers we've got on there. It really helps the channel grow, and it gives me money to do things like buy Freddy gloves for props for videos. I didn't buy this because it's a thing I've wanted for forever. I bought it specifically as a prop for this video. Okay, it's a little bit of both. But yeah, that's the video. Those are all of the things that I have to say. There's some spooky shit going on in the DC cartoons, and leave comments below to let me know what I missed. And you know what? Stick around for another 12 seconds for the spookiest shit. Richard Mon 12! That's the end of the video.